Back in 2019, the Seattle Sounders let fans vote on the greatest XI in the MLS era. And I'd say we did an okay job with our selections, but it could have been better. It's been 4 years since then, and I've always kind of wanted to do a video where I make my own Sounders greatest XI. So in today's video, we're gonna be doing it.
Disclaimer, don't get all upset if I didn't put any players that you guys would have put in. Just let me know your guys' thoughts in the comments down below. My opinion is not indefinite, 100% cemented in stone correct. Everyone is entitled to their own opinions, and it is completely okay if you agree or disagree with me.
When it comes to the formation for this XI, I think it'd just be best to go with the bog standard 4-4-2. That's what you see in most greatest all-time XIs from Sky Sports, CBS, NBC, whoever it may be. On top of the XI, I will give like a 5-player honorable mention list to players that just kind of missed out on the cut. Starting in goal, there's only really 3 options you can pick from, be it Casey Keller, Michael Geschperning, or Stefan Frei. And I think based off of longevity, which is going to be the biggest theme in today's video when it comes to picking our players, because longevity is what really helps when picking a player to make a case for them that they're the greatest player in that position for a club. You gotta kind of give it to Stefan Frei. He won everything at the Sounders. He's been here for so long. He single-handedly won the Sounders the MLS Cup in 2016 with his performance in the final. Yes, Casey Keller is a really good historical goalkeeper in US soccer history, but by the time he came to the Sounders, it was kind of his later stage in his career. It wasn't like his peak performance. Geschperning, he was only here for like 2 seasons, and fans really didn't like him. I personally really liked the guy as well. We did a video with him, and he follows us, so I think that's super dope because I really liked him back in that era of 2012, 2013. That's when I first started getting into watching the Sounders, and that's why I really liked him a lot. But it's very obvious Stefan Frei has to be the goalkeeper. When it comes to left back, I think the very obvious choice on paper is Nuhu, but personally for me, I wouldn't go with him. There's guys like Tyson Wall, Leo Gonzalez, but for me personally, I would go with Jovan Jones. He was hands down one of our best players in that 2016 season when we won MLS Cup. By far is probably the best technical ability wise left back we had. I mean, that first stint he had with us, oh my god. Absolute chef's kiss on the field with his performances. He was so good offensively, he was so good defensively. His dribbling capabilities, how he dribbled with the ball, moved up and down the pitch with it, I thought he was really good. So I'm gonna actually go with him in the left back spot. I personally always liked Nuhu, but he never really was like upper echelon for us at the left back spot. His best performances were, I thought, when he played as that left center back in the 3-back formation. We played 5 in the back with the wing backs. That's where I thought Nuhu was upper echelon. That's where I thought, okay, this is truly his best position. But as a left back, he has his defensive flaws, he has his offensive flaws, he gets hot-headed in really bad moments, and due to those inconsistencies, for me, I'm gonna go with Jovan Jones. For the right back spot, there is a few good options. You can think of Aaron Johansson, DeAndre Yedlin, Alex Roldan if you're on some hard drugs, but I think you gotta go with Kelvin Leerdam. Similarly to Jovan Jones, he was so good offensively, defensively for the club. I mean, he played at a very high level before coming to the Sounders, played in the Eredivisie, was a very important piece to why we won MLS Cup in 2019, was a big part of Brian Schmetzer's success when he took over and once we signed him. He's all in all just overall a really well-rounded right back, where yes, DeAndre Yedlin would probably be the second best shout, but Yedlin was just speed. He was nothing else. He never really got any better outside of his speed. He just kind of was always a speed demon, and that's why he kind of struggled when he went to Europe, because he relied so heavily on it. But being a defender means you have to be good at defending, which he was always kind of just okay at and never necessarily really improved at it. So that's why I'm gonna go with Kelvin Leerdam. Then for the center back pairing, there have been so many good center backs that have played for the Sounders, but I think one player that for sure has to be in there is Chad Marshall. I mean, arguably the greatest center back in MLS history. Won an MLS Cup with the Columbus Crew, won an MLS Cup with us. You thought when we signed him, maybe he was past his best, but he still was an upper echelon center back for us. He was the biggest reason we were so good defensively during that time period when he was here. So he's a very obvious shoo-in. The next question is, who should be the center back paired with him? We've had so many good defenders at the club, but I think, in my opinion, Yeimar has to be the guy paired next to him. He's kind of the closest thing we've had to Chad Marshall since Chad Marshall. In the fan voting, we picked Zach Scott. He is Mr. Seattle Sounders, but that was more pre-MLS era that we saw the best from Zach Scott. In the MLS era, he was fine. He was a good utility player in that defensive line for us. But in the center back position, I think I definitely would rather take Yeimar when we were in the MLS era compared to Zach Scott. He was great for what we needed at the time, but Yeimar's been an absolute beast, arguably our best defender since he's joined the club back in 2020, been arguably one of the best defenders in MLS since he's come into the league, and that center back pairing is absolutely perfection. No one is running past those two guys. They're built like brick shit houses.
He's built like a brick shit house.
Well, holding.
Moving on to the midfield, I'm going to start with the left mid, and I'm going to be a little bit cheeky with this position. I know we've had some good left mids, Lamar Nagel, Marco Papa, the list goes on. But I'm going to put a guy which I don't think quite makes my cut for the forward position, but he has played left mid / left winger in his career when he was in Europe. And when he came here, granted it wasn't his main position, but I'm going to be a little cheeky with it, and I'm going to go with Clint Dempsey. One of the Sounders' all-time leading goal scorers, was the record transfer for us, had a lot of clutch moments. Granted, I do think Dempsey, in regards to Sounders GOATs, isn't really in like the top 5. Obviously, he's a U.S. men's national team greatest of all time. He's one of the Sounders' all-time leading goal scorers, so those are things that are important. Was probably one of the most clutch players for us in regard to like big moments. But when Oba wasn't on the field with him, Dempsey wasn't as great as he was when Oba was with him in the forward position. He's definitely heavily reliant on him, but Dempsey has to be in there when you talk about Sounders' greatest XI in the MLS era. So I think a good idea would just be put him in the left mid spot, because he's definitely better than most of the left mid options that I could have picked from. So I think this is a good way to implement him into the team. Then moving on to the right mid spot, again, I'm going to be a little bit cheeky because I don't have an out and out attacking midfielder. Again, a player that has played this position when he was in Europe and as well at the Sounders is Nicolas Lodeiro. I mean, he is probably the Sounders' greatest player of all time in the MLS era. He's not for me personally, but that's just because that's just my preference. But I totally agree with anyone that says Nico Lodeiro, Sounders go. I totally get it. And I think that's 100% valid if you want to say that. And since he is the Sounders GOAT, you gotta get him into this team. But since in my formation, I don't have a center attacking midfielder, I'll just put him in the right mid spot. He's had great performances in that position. Yes, it's not his main position, but it's not like he can't do a job in that spot. And I don't really think there's much that needs to be said. Yes, we've had some good right mids over the years. I think another guy that you could mention, shout out to Mauro Rosales, similarly to Lodeiro. He was an assist machine for the club, could play at the cam spot, play at right mid, but Lodeiro has to be in a greatest Sounders XI. Then moving on to the two midfielders, probably the toughest two positions to pick from because the Sounders have been blessed to have had so many good midfielders. In these positions, it is a little bit down to preference and how long you've been watching the team. But in one of those spots, I think it is undeniable you have to pick Ozzie Alonso. The Honey Badger was that guy at the CDM spot. Not only is one of the Sounders' greatest midfielders, but one of the greatest midfielders in MLS history. The dude defined the CDM role. He was an absolute tank unit in that position. He was so good at his job, breaking up play, passing the ball, moving the ball up and down the field. Ozzie Alonso, I think, has to be a shoo-in for the first CM spot. The next one, I'm gonna go with someone that is quite similar to Ozzie in regards to how he plays. A little bit more of a modern style version of him, but you gotta kind of go with Cristian Roldan. Ever since he broke into the scene back in 2015 for the club, he's been pivotal in the midfield roles, winning 2 MLS Cups, a CONCACAF Champions League, playing all over the field similarly to Brad Evans, which I think actually might be a better comparison for Cristian Roldan. He's got the longevity. He's been with the team for about as long as Ozzie was with the team. Recency bias, maybe, yes, but I'm going to put him next to Ozzie Alonso in the midfield, and I think that's an absolute crack midfield. And finally, moving on to my two strikers. I think there's really only a pool of like 4 forwards you can pick from, and I really do think it is down to preference. Who would you want? Who do you think are the best two forwards in Sounders history. First one, I think most people would put this guy's name down. If you don't, I think you need to go see a doctor, is Obafemi Martins. He is hands down the best individual player the Sounders have ever had in MLS. The goals, the flicks, the tricks, the moments. Obafemi Martins was just absolute jaw-dropping for this team. He made it so enjoyable to go to Sounders matches with him and Dempsey on the field. Anything was possible. We could be down 3-0 to the LA Galaxy, and with those two on the field, I would still have hope that we could come back and even still win the game. That's how mesmerizing and amazing he was and how much of an impact he had for this team. So he has to be the first one. I mean, I still have thoughts of missing Oba every single day when I watch the Sounders play. That guy was insane, and maybe I took him for granted when he was playing for this team, because we have not had someone like that, I don't think, ever. And hopefully maybe when De La Vega gets healthy, he could be something like that, replicate some of those just magical moments that Oba had for us, the wonder goals, the tricks, the moments. Like, the guy was mesmerizing. He has to be my first striker. Then for my second one, this is going to be the controversial part, and a lot of you are most definitely not going to agree with me. Maybe you might, maybe you won't. It's going to be Fredy Montero. He's going to be my other striker in the team. For me, Fredy is my Sounders GOAT. I've always idolized him. He's the reason I started following this team. His insane magical moments, similar to Oba, but his wonder goals, his were just mesmerizing, especially in a young time in MLS where the Sounders as well were a young team, didn't have that many star-studded players, big names. Fredy Montero, I really enjoyed watching him play, and as I said, he's the biggest reason I became a Sounders fan. When he scored that goal against the LA Galaxy, that 35-yard long shot, I just was like, wow, holy shit, this guy is insane. And I know a lot of you might pick Ruidíaz. This is my bias. Fredy's my favorite Sounders player of all time, and I think will probably always be my favorite Sounders player, so I have to put him in to my greatest XI. Then for the honorable mentions, for my 5 players that I've picked out for that, the first one's got to be Kasey Keller, because we got to put another goalkeeper in. As I said, he was past his best by the time he came to the Sounders, but he's still a really good player for us, especially when we were such a young team, had a lot of inexperiences. Kasey Keller was the perfect guy to be a captain, a leader for that defensive line, had a lot of clutch moments for this team, so he has to be one of the honorable mentions. Next one is Mr. Seattle Sounders, someone I already mentioned in the video, Zach Scott. Again, similarly to Keller, was kind of past his best in the MLS era, but he's Mr. Seattle Sounders. You have to have him in the honorable mentions. Then next is the man that is still doing work for the Sounders to this day, Brad Evans. Similarly to Christian Roldan, played all over the field, won an MLS Cup with us, did so much for the club, and is still doing so much for the club. Then next is João Paulo, which might be a little bit of a surprise for you guys, but João Paulo has been revolutionary in that midfield role. I mean, I haven't seen someone play in that midfield regista role like João Paulo has. He plays more that modern style midfield role that you don't see with some of those older midfielders that the Sounders once had, from your Gonzo Pinedas, Ozzy Alonso's. He was a different kind of midfielder when we brought him in those first couple of years pre-ACL tear. He still is really good now, but pre-ACL tear, that guy was, the moment I saw him play, I knew that he was going to be insane for this team. That's why I have him on the back of my shirt from that year we signed him in 2020. And then of course we have to have Raul Ruidíaz, the all-time leading goal scorer in Sounders history. A lot of you would probably start him next to Obafemi Martins, but for me, he's gonna have to be my honorable mentions, because for me, Fredy is one of my Sounders GOATs, so he has to be in my starting XI. But Ruidíaz, I mean, the goals speak for itself. Definitely, he's dried up in the goal scoring department the last couple of years, but we can't forget about all the great moments he's had since he has joined back in 2018. He's been a machine for us, especially against the Portland Timbers. That guy loves scoring against the Timbers, and he will definitely go down as well as one of the Sounders GOATs. But boys and girls, that's going to be the end of today's video. Let me know your guys' thoughts in the comments down below. As I said in the beginning of the video, don't absolutely come at me with my picks in each position. Just let me know your guys' thoughts. Will you agreed with me, disagreed with me? My opinions are not set in stone. They are not indefinite, the right answer or the wrong answer. I'm just a guy giving you all my opinion because we all love the Seattle Sounders. So let me know your guys' thoughts in the comments down below. We mustn't forget a big shout out to our Patreon members, Nathan Goody, Scott Ran with Scissors, Aldo Hernandez, Hernan Gonzalez, Zach Barkhurst, and Mason Gurnett. If you guys want to become Patreon members, there's always a link down in the description. But boys and girls, I hope you'll have a lovely day.